McCubs, let's move on to Man United, because you must have been absolutely on top of the world on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I was. It was just a really entertaining game, wasn't it? And in particular from a United perspective. PSG were obviously very poor. If you want to hear more about that, we did chat about that, or you and Joe chatted about it, didn't you, Doogie, on Wednesdays?
We did indeed.
On Wednesday's UCL review, at least from a PSG perspective in terms of where they really lacked. But yeah, I mean, similarly to Lazio, United fans haven't begun this season in particularly optimistic kind of form, as it were, because United's first 3-4 games were disastrous. Aside from that kind of 3-2 win over Brighton, obviously they lost the other two games, but even that game against Brighton, United were very not convincing at all. And unlike Lazio, it wasn't like they were coming up against the best sides in the division either. Lazio did have those tough games against Atalanta and Inter, which I didn't think they actually played too badly in. Whereas United did look particularly hapless in defence, which is somewhere they improved last season. And I think that was the main thing for me in this game against PSG, was that the defence just looked so much better. Obviously, Ole has utilised that 3-5-2 before in big games. I think Mourinho used to do it actually at United as well, and they generally it has come off for United in those big games. Axel Tuanzebe and Wan-Bissaka obviously were very impressive in dealing with Mbappe. I think Tuanzebe made 7 clearances in the end, which is the most on the pitch. Wan-Bissaka clocked up 8 tackles and interceptions, and kind of away from the numbers, generally Tuanzebe tended to win his duels with Mbappe, which I think very impressive for a guy who hasn't played since November 2019. When you look at it from like an expected goals standpoint, PSG actually weren't that bad. I think they did cause United problems at points in the game, which kind of shows in the XG. Non-penalty XG has it as 0.7 to United and 1.1 to PSG. So obviously that's not including the Fernandes penalty. That's also not including the Martial own goal. So David De Gea did have to be on top form to keep them at bay. And I was thinking throughout the game that really, I think a better side than United, say a Liverpool or a Man City, I think would have been like 3-0 up against PSG at half time. I think United were quite wasteful in the final third, which I think probably explains why it took so long for them to retake the lead through Marcus Rashford. But I think on the balance of play and just the general play, it was clear who was the better team. I think Fred and McTominay really dominated that midfield. I think they won possession around 12 times between them. Fred was essential in the transition, as he has been in big games for United. I think he completed 2 dribbles, completed 90% of his passes as well. So he kind of really showed that, really kind of repaid Solskjaer's faith for including him over Pogba in the side. But I think, Bruno Fernandes, I think if United are to progress kind of to say the quarterfinals in this competition, then I think Bruno Fernandes is going to be the key for them. Like, he made 5 tackles, he took 4 shots, most of them outside the box, granted, but still was a threat throughout the game. Also created 2 chances. He already has 3 goals and 2 assists in 4 Premier League appearances this term, which is pretty impressive considering United have been rubbish aside from that Newcastle game. Only KDB is actually averaging more than his 4 key passes per 90 in the league as well. So I know he gets a little bit of stick from a lot of his goals coming from penalties and whatnot, but he really is essential to that United attack. Even when Rashford or Martial are having off days, he's the one who really steps up. And I think similarly to Lazio, although United did spend a lot more, United fans were pretty disappointed with their summer business. But having said that, the players that they have brought in do have a lot of UCL pedigree. Obviously, Alex Telles has been playing almost every season for Porto. Donny van der Beek, although he's very young, has been a key player to Ajax's kind of exploits in Europe in the last 3 years. Edinson Cavani, of course, needs no introduction. And I think they've clocked up 128 appearances in the competition between them. So they've got players who are used to big UCL nights, and Solskjaer as well, at least in the very limited games he's managed in the competition, has done all right as well. Obviously, this was his 2nd win against PSG in as many games, away at least. But I think a lot will come down to his tactics, because they are still in a tough group. They have come through one of the harder ties, but they still have to come up against PSG at home, where there might be a little bit more pressure on them. You'd expect Tuchel to maybe alter his tactics as well, and he's going to be facing Nagelsmann twice as well, and I think Leipzig are easily going to be a tougher challenge. I think that they press very high, don't they? And United under Solskjaer, I think that has been one of their weak points, especially with that defence in kind of inconsistent form. I think they might struggle against that high Leipzig press. So they've got them next week, and they've got a trip to Başakşehir the week after. They're a little bit more of an unknown entity, aren't they? Başakşehir did very well last season, but last time I checked, they were bottom of the Super League this term. So they've had a pretty poor start to the season. So yeah, I think like with the teams we're talking about, I think United, realistically aren't going to be a contender to actually win it, but could definitely, on the basis of Tuesday's result, I think a quarter-final place is not out of the question. That would be a great achievement, I think. But yeah, I think it all comes down to really Ole's tactics in big games. If he can actually go toe to toe with Nagelsmann, I'd be really impressed.
Yeah, I think Sorry, Henry, far away.
Sorry, I was just I was just wondering, just to sort of like touch on Ford's Ashley's question itself, because obviously you both watched that game. Just briefly, what did you learn about PSG which might actually worry you? Because as good as United were, and it was quite an impressive performance. Surely there were limits to PSG and what they did there. Because if you look at their defence, for example, with Wan-Banat out for most of the season, Kajawa, I don't believe he's a sort of world-class left back. Kimpembe has now obviously had to step up quite a lot, and even at right back, they're kind of limited in their options there. Alessandro Florenzi straight in, and they're having to play like Iganagay and the Herrera at centre mid, and they're going quite a defensive midfield structure there, and they're having to sort of compensate for the fact maybe their defence isn't quite as strong, and maybe like PSG's undoing this year is going to be their kind of limited defensive ability. I was just wondering what you two, having seen the game, sort of thought about that.
I think they massively missed Verratti, to be honest. Like I was quite buoyed by the fact that Verratti was missing for that game, because he's such a key player for them, and they have compensated without him in the past. But I think that was it. Like the midfield was just so porous, and without that world class presence of Verratti in there, I think that's always going to be key for them. And as well, Marquinhos I don't think was fully fit. So without either of them in there, I just don't think that midfield is particularly good. I'm not sure what you thought, Dukes.
I didn't think it was particularly good, that midfield. It didn't seem like the right combination for that game as well. I thought Fred and McTominay actually completely dominated, really. Their work rate was so much better than Danilo Pereira's. It was so much better than Ander Herrera's as well. But PSG, they had their moments going forward as well. But Angel Di Maria and Neymar only created one chance between them. It was really sort of Mbappe and Mbappe only. And actually, with both of them pulling left, Mbappe and Neymar so often, down Wan-Bissaka and Tuanzebe's channel, who was having a magnificent game on the right-hand side. I mean, PSG just didn't really carry much threat.